Hello and welcome to the NCP training module for occupational health and safety. My name's Greg Scott and I'm from Greenfields Business Advisory. This course covers the fundamentals of occupational health and safety. If you're an experienced practitioner and you know about occupational health and safety, you still may get some information, some things you didn't know, but predominantly it's designed to take those who aren't familiar with occupational health and safety and its obligations and give them the information they need to discuss with their customers. So firstly, a brief disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, so this is not providing legal advice, so it really provide an overview and information for you to be able to use with your customers. The course itself is made up of 4 modules, the first being the introduction and overview. It's followed by Module 2, which provides a safety framework, an overview of the safety framework. Module 3 will explore how to eliminate and minimize risks. And Module 4 provides some information on how you can work with your clients. Module 1, introduction and overview. So occupational health and safety. What is it and why is it important? Well, if you run a business and have employees, you must provide and maintain a working environment that is safe and free of risks to health, so far is as reasonably practicable. Difficult to say. What does it really mean? Reasonably practicable is hard to define, but a judge will help you with that if you have to defend some of your actions, and he or she will decide whether you've taken all reasonable efforts that are reasonably practicable. As part of your obligations, you must, so far is as reasonably practicable, provide and maintain safe plant, which is machinery and equipment, provide and maintain safe systems of work, for example, controlling entry to high-risk areas and providing systems to prevent falls from heights, ensure the safe use, handling, storage or transport of plant or substances, keep workplaces that you manage and control in a safe condition, free of risks to health. For example, ensure fire exits aren't blocked and the work site is generally tidy. Provide suitable facilities for welfare, toilets, tea rooms, for example, at any workplace you manage and control. And also give your employees the necessary information, instruction, training or supervision to enable them to do their work in a way that is safe and without risks to health. So quite a few statements, but what does it mean? Okay, so in Australia, we have workplace safety laws. There's some examples, they're not exhaustive, but they are mandatory with strict compliance obligations. So we have the Occupational Health and Safety Act 2004, the Workplace Injury, Rehabilitation and Compensation Act 2013, which outlines what you need to do to help manage any injured workers back to work, and occupational health and safety regulations for each state. So, for example, in 2017, it was updated in Victoria. We also have industrial manslaughter laws, which are designed to prevent workplace death. They're in each state and territory, and an example, in Victoria, it would come into effect on the 1st of July 2020. And they're really designed to target those directors or those managing the organisation for gross negligent conduct. And a note here, ignorance to your obligations is not a defence. You can't say to the judge, sorry, sir, I didn't know that I had to do something to fulfil my obligations. So we have acts and laws, and who are the regulators? So in each state and territory, we have state-based authorities that regulate and enforce compliance to the obligations. Safe Work Australia is at the Commonwealth level, and also is Comcare, which is put together to help harmonise the various workplace laws and regulations in each state and territory of Australia. If you're a national company, for example, in the past you may have had different regulations in each state, but now through Comcare it's harmonised, and most of the acts and the regulations are much the same across each state state of Australia. Okay, some examples and penalties. Some examples that would need to comply with, for example, if you've got steel storage racking in your warehouse or in a factory, they must be inspected at least every 12 months. Similar for forklifts, would need to be inspected and maintained. You need to have mandatory license to operate high-risk machinery, for example, forklifts, elevated work platforms, cranes, those type of machinery. You need to have physical separation of forklifts and people, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a penalty case in a moment. Fall arresting devices to prevent fall from heights. You need to have systems and procedures for working in confined spaces. You need to have lockout and tagout procedures for isolating machinery. An example is when a maintenance worker is operating on a machine or maintaining it so that the operator doesn't switch it on inadvertently. Some examples of penalties. A painter was convicted and fined $40,000 after a subcontractor he employed fell from heights through the shed roof near Shepparton on a farm. Whilst it was a subcontractor, the prime contractor, the painter in this case, didn't provide a safe system of work. Another example is a company was convicted and fined $120,000 after a worker was run over by a truck at a plant in Pakenham, near Dandenong in Victoria. And in the case of the first example of industrial manslaughter conviction, Queensland company, which I believe was a vehicle car wrecker, was convicted and fined $3 million for industrial manslaughter in 2020 after the death of a worker in a forklift accident. Both directors were sentenced to 10 months in jail. In this case, there was gross negligence. There was no safety plan, no systems in place. The forklift driver was inexperienced, didn't have the appropriate license, and there was no physical separation between forklift and people. In this case, also the directors tried to mislead the investigators who were investigating what was the cause of the incident. Okay, so we have laws, we have regulators, we've got some penalties. How do we go about by fulfilling our obligations? Okay, so you need safe systems of work. What are they? Well, there are a range of documents outlining an organisation's approach to meeting their obligations. Provides a framework for how obligations will be achieved. In the illustration on the right, you can see governance documents would be a policy, some standards and procedures, with operational documents such as standard operating procedures, work instructions, checklist tools, those types of things. Provides guidance for organisational staff on what to do to meet its obligations. Outlines the responsibilities for managing occupational health and safety, and provides some tools and equipment, for example, personal protective equipment to minimise risks to safety. Okay, we also need to take some action. It's one thing to have all those systems and procedures documented, but unless you put them into action, you're not meeting your obligations. So what is action and why is action important? Well, it's taking those safe systems of work and applying them effectively across the organisation. Action is important too. 1, minimise risk to employees and others. Implement procedures. Provide training to introduce knowledge and understanding. Ensure the organisation meets its obligations, and to demonstrate to regulatory bodies that an organisation is meeting its obligations. An example is if it wasn't recorded, it didn't happen. For example, if someone did an induction but you didn't sign off the employee that they understood that induction, then you wouldn't be meeting your obligations. You can't demonstrate to the authorities that you were compliant. Okay, so that completes the first module. Here's some of the things we learned. Australia is governed by a strong regulatory framework of acts, regulations and authorities responsible for enforcing workplace safety. If an entity doesn't comply with its obligations, penalties and possible jail terms may apply. Safe systems of work form a framework for an organisation to meet its obligations, and action is required in line with safe systems of work to meet its obligations. That concludes Module 1. Join me for Module 2 as we'll explore those safe systems of work. Thank you very much.